Kicking in? Marvellous. Okay, so good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for your time to really take an hour and a half's journey through mental health awareness. Okay, so I will make the session, bear in mind I'm the only one who's doing the talking, as interactive as possible. Um, so as many of you know, you've already tested out the chat facility, so that will be our main way of communication. I will be asking you to take part in some polls, and we'll be sharing with you some documents that will be sent to you as resources for after today's session. Okay. So let me just make a start. So a little bit about who I am. I'm a mental health first aider for Maguire Healthcare Training. So I head up the healthcare team. So I have responsibilities for our own internal team, our team of educators and consultants and facilitators, and also it's a subject I train in, and I'm very passionate about as well, because it's affected parts of my life, and does continue to in some cases as well. So yeah, something that is very close to my heart, and I hope that comes across. I also come from a family of teachers, so I get quite a lot of evidence of how people are feeling at this moment, which I hope you'll get, that how much I sort of empathise with your sort of current situation as well. Okay. So what we want you to take from the session today. So live presentation from me. There are slides that I will be going through during the course of this afternoon, and you will be sent a copy of those. As soon as we finish today, they'll automatically be sent to you, so you'll have a copy of those. We will ask you to take part in some polls should you wish as well. They're really only a snapshot of today. They're not being used in any great research project or anything. They're really just for us to get a feel of, as a group, where you are, and I can give you a little bit of feedback on how that's fitting with other groups that I'm working with, both within teaching and also within healthcare as well. I've mentioned the chat facility, so there will be times where I will ask for your input, and I very much appreciate your input as well. What I'm not going to do is sort of be reading people's names out and quoting them. I'm really just going to be glancing at it, just feel that if there's anything maybe that I would like to address, and maybe something that's representative of how the group are feeling as well this afternoon. Okay, and if there's any questions, particularly for anybody, please stay on afterwards, and there'll be a Q&A, but at any point really, if you want to post anything, and I will address it. I might very kindly and very politely say I'm coming to that, and cover it slightly later if I know I am. Otherwise I'll aim to address it at the end. Because this session is only 1.5 hours, what we've really surrounded with, is, with the help of Education Mutual, is resources that you can, and takeaways, and things that you can put into action after the session. Okay. So everybody's okay with all of that? That sounds okay. So I say, those of you who want to, feeling active and want to use the chat, brilliant. For those who just want to listen, that's great as well. So we're all different, as we know, as educators. It doesn't always work one size fits all. Okay, so what the aims are of this session is that we want you to be more confident about your understanding your own mental health, if that's and that's, I say health in the sense of, people think, oh, mental health, does it sound like illness? No, there is mental health, there is good mental health, there is positive mental health, and that's really what we want to strive for. So recognizing what is good and what maybe can be poor about mental health in the workplace and with your colleagues, spot some of the signs. If you are recognizing them, feeling more confident in being directing to support and resources, and also if you're feeling you want to have conversations with friends or family or colleagues, that you know where to start, because that's often the most difficult times. I'm not going to turn you into counsellors this afternoon, but what I will hopefully give you a little bit more confidence and resources and ideas and ways of thinking about how we can reach out, either for ourselves or for our friends and family as well. Okay. So thanks for the messages. Thank you. Okay, so just as a caveat, we are not clinicians, okay? I come from, as I'm a mental health first aider. This is about supporting you, your family, friends, and colleagues, and lots of takeaways and resources. So we put together packs that are specifically for teachers, NHS, and charities as well, because no, all the people you want to help won't all work with, as teachers. They will often work in the wider business market as well. So we've put together an array of different things, and there is great support on Education and Mutual site as well. That they've also have their own information, and we also support them with additional resources packs as well. Okay, so let's understand where we're starting this, and we can't really not mention the elephant in the room, which is COVID, and how it's, well, very politely run a bus through pretty much everything in the last 6 months, particularly within your lives as teachers and educators. So the evidence before lockdown was 1 in 4 people will experience mental health problems this year. The evidence is moving towards, and it's anecdotal, obviously, with what's happening in the world. There's probably not that many statisticians is recording all of this at the moment, but the general evidence is feeling it's either moving towards 1 in 2, 1 in 2. Probably at the moment it's 1 in 3. So we already had issues in the wider population. Okay, and then we got locked down. Okay, so I'd like to just spend a few moments sort of talking about how, as a nation, and then again as teachers, how we dealt with all of this. So if you look about when lockdown started, and it, for many of us, it came out of the blue. I don't know about you, I was sort of jogging on thinking, okay, sort of feeling like there might be an issue here, but actually when that announcement came on Sunday, I think it was like, whoa, we started to make some preparation, but I think we were all almost catapulted into this new future. Now, you think about sort of human psychology and what we're pretty good at as human beings. We've always been good at the fight or flight mechanism. It's been with us since cavemen style. We always knew that we would we get stuck in, the adrenaline would kick in, and we found ways of working. And I think you all should be really proud of yourselves in the thing of being creative. Some of you are working from home, some of you had to or go into school, support key workers as key workers' children. So there was an absolute, like, wow, we were doing different lesson plans in a different way. We were collaborating with colleagues, we were learning new software, we were doing a myriad of different things, and not to mention, probably, we've also got our own families. Maybe they were at home, maybe you were homeschooling, maybe you had your husband working in the loft, which is I did. So whatever that was, we coped, and it was like, okay, we got through, because that's what we felt we needed to do, and there was some amazing things that came out of it, and hopefully we'll sort of keep a hold of some of those amazing things that came out of those times. Then what we moved into is the going back to school. Okay, so interestingly, there's a fair bit of psychology around what that could feel like. So for many of us, we think, okay, in the fond days of pre-COVID, going, our journey to school. So think about it almost in an automatic pilot way. So we knew if we jumped in maybe into our car, or we got on a regular bus, whatever, we had our lunch with us, we pulled up at school, we found our parking place, or we went into reception, we met people, we met lots of students on the way, maybe physical contact with people, maybe a hug or a hello, how are you? Haven't seen you for a while. You go off into your staff room, you go and get your favorite mug, have a coffee or a tea, you go to your classroom, or whatever that is. All of those things that were normal, your brain created a set of shortcuts. So that was what made it familiar. That's what made it comfortable to you, because you knew those things were a given. Those things were in place. Now, what was never a given was all of the work that you do to in developing your educational resources, your teaching, your lesson plans, all of those things you have to work on actively. So what you've got two things going on there. You've got some things that should have been in unconscious, and then you had the things that you strive for every day to do your job well, which is the conscious element. But what returning to work in very different circumstances has given us is that everything has become different. So our shortcuts have now become dead ends, because those things that you used to be able to do that were just routine and comfortable, you've got to find new ways of doing them. So now we have arrows on the floor. We've got sort of separators. We've got to go raise round school, maybe a one-way system. We've got to be Usain Bolt to get to the classroom before our children do, our pupils. Whatever that is, it's all very different. The distancing part of it, classroom setups. So all of those things that used to be, well, normal, now actually everything has got to be thought about. And some of the thinking some of the facts that come out of every time that you have to spend time thinking about uh, another 10 seconds on, oh gosh, I need to do it this way, oh gosh, I was about to do that but now I can't, then that adds an enormous mental strain on you, because it's actually then it uses an awful lot of brain power and stress to be able to keep all of that as normal. And we've got to keep our game face on and we're calm while we're doing all of this stuff as well. So it is absolutely exhausting to do that. And a lot of people said they really do feel quite wiped out. And is it any wonder? Because there's everything is in a conscious way of looking at things at the moment. So I just wondered whether how that resonates with maybe how you're feeling for those who have returned. I guess some of you maybe are sort of mixing. Some of you are at home, some of you are at school, so maybe working that juggling part time. But I'd just be very interested, maybe using the chat function to give me an indication of whether that resonates with you. Are you feeling that? Does that make sense what I've said? That would be great. Just I'll give you a couple of minutes to jot some things down. That would be I appreciate your feedback. That's interesting. Someone said, yeah, couldn't quite put off our finger on it, but it does make sense. Okay. I'd like to give you some good news here, is that as you forge those new shortcuts, and I hate using the expression this they become the new norm, but we are going to have to do it in this context, is it will get better. You will feel less tired because you'll make those shortcuts and things will start developing it. Now, I appreciate things are constantly on the move daily, and that it's trying to keep fix one thing, but again, this is about cutting yourself a little bit of slack and saying, actually, we are in completely uncharted territory here. So don't be feeling like, oh, is it just me? It isn't. That's what it can feel like. So there's a couple of bits things here. I'm just going to do refer to my chat if that's a moment. Yeah, a few of which you made a really good point there about those of you who continue to work supporting key worker children, is almost they were ahead of that and have forged their new norm. So it's not quite as stressful making that transition to maybe those who haven't. Okay, so thank you very much for that. Okay, so just wanted to sort of talk about in context of where we all are, and then talk about in context of mental health. So I will move on. So thank you very much for that feedback. Okay, so this was when I was doing my research for this course. I found this great quote from Sinead Brearty from Education Support, which I'll let you read. I thought it was very relevant. So, I absolutely appreciate you will all recognise all of those elements, and this was done. Sorry, this extract was taken from last summer. Okay, so you can only imagine how that's changed going forward. So I thought it was a very apt and observational quote from her. Okay, and this was another one really that I thought was particularly interesting. Okay, so why I thought about this one was I'm going to take an analogy from the aerospace industry. Okay, so setting a positive example for pupils. So the aerospace industry. So those who've been on a plane, I haven't yet been brave enough. But for those who've been on a plane, remember that then they do the safety check and they talk about the mask dropping down, and they're always talking about you help yourself before anyone else, including children. So I'm looking at this from that perspective. So you can only be if you're your best self and you're supporting yourself, then you can be a positive example to your pupils. So being, honest and open about mental health can be really positive because it means you're not bottling it up, and equally from a child's perspective, they're not bottling it up. Now, I'm not going to cover on um, mental health in children today because I appreciate that I'm not qualified to do that. But I'm guessing there is will be support that will be given to the pupils and yourselves in your own school environments. So this is really about you today. This is about how much you want to share. And I recently watched a good YouTube clip where it was about a teacher who was raising awareness within his pupils about mental health. And he asked them to do some work and what they thought it was, and what it looked like and felt like in their lives, and also what they would expect to be able to see as the signs and all of those things. So we explored all of that, and he said, okay, well, next time I'm going to invite someone in with a mental health issue. So they all said fine, and then he went out the classroom and came back in again, and he said, it's me. And you could see on the faces of the children that it was like, okay, but he's our teacher. He functions. He's fine. He's here for us every day. So I think it was a very brave thing for him to do. I think it opens up that dialogue as well, and an honest dialogue. So it's not just about the Me Too. It's just about us all being honest and open, and being our best selves, or trying to be our best selves. And it's also okay not to be okay too. So, okay, so what I'd like to do now is my first poll, if I may. So, I just like to, from what I've spoken about so far, is just get a sort of quick check on how you feel that it is manifesting itself within your own organization. Okay, so what I'll do is I will flick to another screen. I'll launch the poll. The questions are set out as are, so how does it reflect what you're seeing within your organization? And just to also confirm that this is completely anonymous, so really you'll just see the actual poll as a pie chart as we go forward. Okay, so I'm just going to switch to the survey. Okay, so you should see that up on your screen now. I'll just give it another couple of minutes and then we'll end the poll. Okay, so thank you. I'm just going to end the voting, and then you'll see this poll appear on the screen. Okay, so 4% of you saying it reflects exactly, and then largely the remainder say it's pretty accurate and somewhat accurate. Okay, well, thank you very much for your feedback. There's no right or wrong here. It's just really trying to put a straw poll of how people are feeling, and also to think about most important for us is how we address that and how we try and put some mechanisms in to support you going forward. So I think it's, and also I hope just for you to understand that actually other people are feeling that you are as well. Okay. So thank you very much for your input on that. I say none of this will be captured as part of the video as such. I would stop sharing that. I'm going to go back to the slides. Okay. So off the back of that, there's a poll then. What the first step that we'll need to take is be part of creating a culture that's more aware of mental health. And that's not just about leaving that to the SLT team, the HR team, senior leadership team. It's about saying, okay, well, we'll all need to pull together and create a supportive environment where we can all be our true selves at work. Now, I actually think at the moment is, sometimes I don't even know what our true selves are because we're probably being pulled in lots of different directions. So we'll have a mix of people who will be having good days, bad days, just trying to navigate days, getting through days, whatever that feels like. I think what we all need to recognise is that above and beyond that, where things happen for longer periods of time and there is maybe a spiral or people are not feeling any better, then that's when we all need to get our antennae a little bit more tuned in to how we can help. But we all have a part to play, and listening, and it's not always about going, oh yeah, well, I feel the same, it's dreadful, isn't it? All of those things. It does help that you're all in the same boat, absolutely, but I think if when things get a little bit more serious, it's different than that. So mental health and physical health. Okay, so I'm going to look at this from two standpoints for you. Okay, so currently, if you are unlucky enough to break a bone, leg, whatever, then you absolutely know the process that you go to. So you would maybe go to a GP or A&E. They would X-ray it. You'd get either plaster or some support on it. You might need to go for physio. You might be referred to occupational health. In terms of work, you would have notified them. You probably got a note to say how long you need to be off. It might be you might have graduated, returned to work. But we pretty much be clear on what that is in the physical sense. Now, in law at the moment, we don't have the same protocols, processes, and protections in law, if you like, of what that process looks like. So in mental health, it isn't as transparent. So before COVID, and that's, I don't think it's because it has been stalled, is we had it went to House of Parliament, House of Commons, and then onto the Lords, and they have made some recommendations on fine tuning before it goes into law. Now, we've already, because I'm a member of the MHFA, they're already lobbying Parliament to say there should be some updates which are COVID related, sort of factored into the new law, and how that's going to affect people, because we do know we're going to have more instances, most definitely, of mental health. So it's that's where we're at the moment. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but hopefully it won't get stalled too long before it goes up to the House of Lords for final sign off. Now, that what we then have is complete parity between the two. So everyone will be clear on what the protocol would be if you have mental health issues. in the same way as we do physical issues. So again, from HR form work, for the school, from support. So it works exactly the same way. You won't break your leg and not expect to get a crutch or some support or physio. Well, exactly the same will apply in terms of mental health. Now, it's not, I'd love to say it's going to be there immediately. It probably isn't. But I have to say, the last 3 years, awareness has been massive. I mean, hence, the title of this webinar. But I hope you all agree that, wherever we go now, we have the Royals involved. There are so many charities, Mental Health Awareness Day. We're much more aware, much more talking about it. So I think when it does come into law, we've already explored what that level of support needs to look like. Good organisations, whether right across the board, public sector, already defining what good looks like from their perspective and how we can best support people. So there's been so much sharing with charities. And I think also one of the things that have come out of COVID is there's so much more mental health support gone online, on telephones, on Zoom. So there's much more access than there ever was. So I think that's a positive thing going forward, is that this might not always just be about the referral process and a lot of red tape and the stigma of being off work and where are you going and you're not telling people and all of that. We've got to demystify that if people are going to feel comfortable about going, this is how I'm feeling at the moment. It might be not how I feel forever, but there's something in my life at this moment that means I'm not coping very well. So can I get some support? And then it'll be fine. I'll be okay. I'll be back to myself. It may be different because actually you may start to realise and moderate some of your behaviours that maybe not have been positive to support yourself or situations that you found yourself in. So this is a journey of mental health, and it's a journey of learning as well. So that's, I know there's quite a lot around there, but it's an important distinction to make, and we're moving very positive directions. As I say, probably not as fast as we'd all like, but I think there's been some key learnings that have come out of lockdown and COVID. So let's hope that we can factor those into supporting mental health in a much more flexible way going forward. Okay, so this slide is your frame of reference. So what's this about? It's your little window on the world. So there's lots of keywords and expressions on this slide. And really what I'm wanting us to think about is just open our minds as to all of the things that we are. So you look at many factors on there and you might go, okay, that's me. I recognize that. Yeah, I have values and I know my background and all of things that impact on my life, whether it's from family situations, COVID related situations, likes, dislikes, relationships. So a lot of these are factors that we juggle in our lives. But sometimes when mental health issues come along, it's we juggle all these, and you look at those and go, well, that's probably normal. That's what I do every day. But sometimes with mental health, it might just be one thing that's just a catalyst, and it just is the tipping point into okay, I can't juggle anymore. I now need some support, and things can come crashing down a little bit. To another person, it might just actually be one of those things that will be affected, and equally that can affect them very badly as well. So suppose what I'm saying here is it's not about judging people. I mean, I have heard, and doing this over the last 3 or 4 years, and some of our workshops in particular, you hear people citing that unhelpful language are being used against them or for them, to say, oh yeah, I'd expect you to have some mental health issues. Yeah, you're off and off, and it's or equally, well, you've got a lovely life. You've got a great husband, home, children, great life. Well, sort of shape up. What is it? So there's a lot of maybe simple judgments made around things which are not helpful, because one thing about mental health is it doesn't understand boundaries, any of these things at all. I say sometimes it can be a catalyst, sometimes it's a convergence of things as well. So for all of us, just thinking, keep an open mind, because equally I think it's probably one thing that lockdown has taught us, and many is we don't really know people's lives. We don't know their home lives. We know what people tell us, don't we? So there's often more going on in people's backgrounds than we realise, and yeah, many choose not to share that. That's fine, but equally, maybe you should respect when things get to a tipping point that actually there may be other things going on in your life, and obviously that applies to you as well. So, what is mental illness? So, it can massively disrupt your thinking, your mood, general functionality in your day, ability to relate to others. Just no, can't get there. Um, it doesn't develop because of your character or on some sort of weakness in your personality or genetics. Absolutely nothing to do with any of that. Or your intelligence. That's all you wonderful people will know. It's got nothing to do with it as well. Um, Mental health can be difficult, and it, I say, knows no boundaries. No one is to blame at all. What we will talk about going forward is some of our lifestyle choices and some of the things that do impact on us and some of the things that we may have some control over. So we will talk about those, but generally it's not about blame at all. So now to my second poll. Okay, so again, this is just to get a snapshot of how this group is feeling. So it's not captured in any way. None of the polls are. So just two questions. Who suffered from mental health during recent years, and who knows someone who suffered from mental health? So I'm just going to switch to the survey, and then you'll see that come up on your screen. Thank you very much to those who've taken part. I'll just give it another couple of moments and then I'll end the voting. Thank you. Okay, so sharing the results. So pretty equal in those who have suffered from mental health, supposed to know. So that's, again, and that very much fits with what I've been seeing across the teaching profession and also the mental health support in the NHS as well. And it very interesting. I'm going to the second slide now. Is so many of you know someone who suffered from mental ill health, far more really than, it's not. It's an observation of mine that it's interesting that you can see and spot in other people mental ill health, and it's higher than actually you recognizing that maybe in yourselves. So it's just an observation, but very much saying no right or wrong, just very much just captures the moment of how people are feeling. So thank you very much for your input on that. Shut that down. So why does this matter? Okay, so 1 in 4, probably nearer to 1 in 2 now experience mental health. But most importantly, I want to use a key word on this slide, is about having trust and a level of trust on how you manage day to day with mental well-being and engagement with it as a subject. So it's again for all of us to be have a level of trusting ourselves to be honest. Equally, if information is entrusted to us, that we take that on board and are directive and helpful in any way we can. But it does take a mind shift to think it as equally as we do with physical health. So let's move into actually some of the diagnosis of mental ill health. Okay, so be very clear here that, yeah, and I've said, well, we're not clinicians, and I will also say that please don't feel that, after this session or for other things that you've read, that you feel that in any way you should be involved in trying to diagnose any of these things, and it should be left to the professionals. I think there's an awful lot of directive help we can give, and that's what this is about. So I would look at this slide and go, uh, particularly those on the left, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, anxiety. So they will all be clinically diagnosed, and should people be diagnosed by a professional, they should come with a treatment plan and being supported by counsellors or specialist doctors, and probably will be supported by medication as well. Okay. So what we have on this is stress, eating disorders, alcohol, drug related and mental health issues. So when I started to look at this, some of these areas are cited as areas that almost one causes the other. So if you're stressed, maybe we drink more or we eat more, or we reach out for some sort of self medication in that area, whatever that can be. But equally, if we don't address these things and we carry on doing the self medication and are not self aware, then actually things can manifest themselves very deeply, and can result in complete breakdowns. So I think there's an awful lot you can do to help in those areas. Now, that's not to say if you get something that is clinically diagnosed, is you should, yeah, absolutely, you need to get some support. But there is actually a much smaller number of the clinical and chronic conditions. They only add up to around about 7% of mental health issues that are diagnosed are chronic long-term conditions that require maybe hospitalisation. So it's about how much of the we live with every day, and very much it is often it's just the elephant in the room. We just don't talk about it. They just almost become normalised. So but we'll talk a little bit more about that. So understanding some of the things that can cause crises. So I'm looking at this from a workplace. So you might start thinking, worrying about projects and tasks. Now, again, I appreciate the threshold for this at the moment is it is high, and you'll be experiencing that. Where you're starting to feel singled out, and feeling very lonely in a crowd, it's not always good. Lack of understanding of situations. So again, some of you are navigating positions where you may have family situations, and some of you have had your shielding pause. So there's different things that are going on at the moment. Um, Real or perceived discrimination, if it's absolutely real, if you are suffering from mental ill health at the moment, to feel a number of these things. So what I want to sort of stress here is this won't be one of these things on this slide. There could be many others on the list, in fact. But what they will be is there'll be several things that will be tipping you over, and mean that you're not coping. So it's just being mindful that, okay, there's levels of what we're all dealing with. I'm not saying it's right, but that is where we are. But where there's several of these things come into play, then you will have to find a coping mechanism, or seek support, whichever, because it's not going to be long term to be able to live with these things. So look at the other stresses. So we have external stresses. We've got our work, and then we've got our home and environmental stresses as well. So that could be our partners, that could be um, death and estrangement, relocation. So we've had a lot of things that have really been pushed to the fore by COVID, conflicts, and actually some serious issues around violence in the home, which again has been sadly growing exponentially during lockdown as well. So there's things that have been real triggers to situations that can cause mental health crises as well. So for us, we're not uh, going to diagnose things, but if we probably need to be able to recognise, well, we do need to recognise those signs in ourselves and in others. Okay, so let's have a look at some of those things. So tiredness and loss of energy. I hope I've addressed some of that with the way you may be feeling with the conscious thinking at the moment. So that again, it should get easier, and I think that's it. It's when these things go on long term and they don't improve. A feeling of sadness that doesn't go away. I have a friend who suffers from depression, and he said when he wakes up in the morning, it's all fine for about an hour and a second, and then he just feels like this great weight lands on his chest, and it's like, okay. So you get on with your day, but it doesn't go away. And he's found some great mechanisms which we'll talk about as we go through. So loss of self-confidence and self-esteem, difficulty concentrating, anxious, helplessness and hopelessness, which again, left can really spiral into depression very quickly. Sleeping problems, and I guess all of us know that if we don't sleep well, then gosh, it just makes everything really, really hard work. A good night's sleep, and sometimes we can get our mojo back and it can get us through. Lots of things, loss of appetite, completely opposite, overeating, comfort eating, physical aches and pains. And I'll talk about more how that physical and the psychological worlds merge in a moment. Thoughts of suicide and death. So the evidence particularly around the statistics for suicide, really focuses on the male community. They are the highest group at risk. So up to 5 years ago, the age group was 18 to 35. And now that has actually shifted from 30 to 50-year-old males. Again, some of the evidence, not some of it's anecdotal, some of it is come from really solid research in that, and I am summarising here, but as a group, less likely to want to see it as a weakness if you're owning up to mental health. See maybe their position in their family as again a weakness, not saying that's how I'm feeling. Some groups, and again, I did see a really good report from the Footballing Association where I think that's been on over lockdown. There was a lot of documentaries about football communities, saying that the guys had to park their egos and own up to how they were feeling. I think I saw something about Freddie Flintoff last night about bulimia as well. So again, eating disorders. So again, it's the more we can have maybe in that community of open discussion and saying, it's okay not to be okay, then the better. But they're probably good hiders. So again, just more awareness than ever. These are all things that should red flag for us. And again, I would stress it's not just going to be one of these things, because I guess one or two of the things on here we'd probably all recognise. It's when those things are going on for a period of time and they're just not going away, and they're building up, if anything, and you cannot see your way out of it. So recognising it yourself and recognising that in others as well. So again, it is hard at the moment because there's so many normal stresses in just getting through. So for all of us to be more vigilant, again, we know and care for largely the people that we work with, so we talk about it in a work context, so we know what their norm looks like. And I think it's that behaviour outside of that that we all need to be aware of. So I touched on about where the physiological and physical world collide. And again, I'm not coming from a diagnostic point of view here, but this is just really from as a personal observation. Anxiety and panic. For those of you who either have suffered a panic attack, or suffer from long-term anxiety, or have witnessed it, you'll know that if you suffer from any of those, you'll feel it absolutely in a physical sense. It's real. The trembling, the sweating, the feeling like it's an asthma attack, it's breathlessness, your heart's going. So it is real stuff that, and to witness and to experience, it's horrible, horrible stuff. Particularly if it's the first time you've witnessed it or experienced it. So what I would say here is that if you don't think because you see that happening maybe with a colleague or a friend of family, do not assume that it is anxiety and panic. Treat it as if it's a physical thing, and let the professionals say to you, okay, it is a panic attack. What is your next how do you help yourself? How can we help you? What we can diagnose it? How do we need to direct you? But please don't try and second guess this one. Treat it as if it's real. Then if it is anxiety and panic, then there are a number of support mechanisms to help. So whether that's breathing exercises, whether that is talking therapies, whatever. I'm speaking from experience, because we had a young man who worked with us who did suffer from panic and anxiety. And when he came to us, he was quite young, he was an apprentice, and he didn't tell us much about it. But I would like to think that we created an environment where he felt comfortable to share when he was feeling uncomfortable and was feeling anxious. So when I was a mental health first aider, he came to me and said, okay, so we had a discussion. One, that he was comfortable with having that discussion, and it was an open discussion, which is a key point. And two, we worked out just signals and little signs and things that I could do to help him. So when he was feeling like that, he'd either just give me a little sign, and he'd either ask me to go out with him. We'd find a safe, quiet space, put me a fire escape or something. And then another time, it might be he'd just say, "I just need 5," and then I'd maybe wander out and see whether he was okay. So we had some breathing techniques he used. We had some tapping techniques that he'd been taught. So there's things here that can help with that enormously, but it's, I say, not trying to second guess it if you've come across it for the first time, because it can happen and it can be very, very, very scary. In your resource pack, I've given you a number of links that particularly work around anxiety and panic, and some of the fantastic charities and NHS support mechanisms that work. So have a look at those. So, on to the stigma and discrimination around mental health. So, you already talked about this and saying that we're all part of creating an open environment, maybe taking away some of our own discriminations about what we think, because it can happen to anybody. And I think once it does happen to maybe a loved one or a friend, then yeah, excuse me, sorry, just put something in the post. So we'll have some further information around the tax fees. Yes, I will touch on that at the end. I will show you exactly what's involved in the links. So that's okay. Thank you. So stigma and discrimination. So we all have our part to play to break it down. It does exist. There's no doubt about it. We know that we have a lot of work to do. But I think also now there is so much more awareness of mental health issues, particularly from COVID and coming out of COVID and working through COVID, or whatever that is going to be, is we all need to be part of the solution. And it's not part of finger pointing or anything else that we involved in. In law, you're protected. Absolutely. It will be easier when then there is also self-diagnosis, self-help aware. Definitely with it, it makes it easier to navigate from the support of individual schools and the sort of education authorities as well. So they have got work to do, but once the law is clear on how they support you as well. What I think it's I'm sorry, Priscilla, you've got to go, but thank you very much for your input so far. What I think we all need to do is to be aware of in an organisation. Again, I do not know your organisations. I'm really not part of that. Is that where there's a culture of not supporting and potentially bullying people because it's become a stigma of letting the team down. You're not pulling your weight. We're all in this together. Or yeah, what's wrong with you? You can't support it. Feeling like that is wrong and it isn't helpful. So again, we all have to find a voice in saying that that's wrong and unhelpful. But there's plenty of support out there. So again, it's not personal to any organisation at all. It's just really what sometimes we experience in now. Okay. So this is an exercise which you will all be asked to do. So I'm just going to flick to this is a handout. It won't be a moment. I'll explain what's in the stress container. Okay, so when we finish today, you'll be sent this handout as they're called a stress container. Okay, so what we are asking you to do is to identify and put into your virtual stress container anything that is concerning you from work, study, home life. Basically write everything in your stress container. Useful to do it for yourself, but also useful to do it as a family. I've had a lot of evidence to say that it's been really helpful to help them have a discussion with the family on what is stressful situation. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of this. I just want to show you what you've got. What the questionnaire does is ask you a series of questions. Okay, what can you do? What you can do to change? Who can help you? What's unhelpful? And what is helpful in terms of coping strategies? So that's your exercise to do personally after you leave today. Okay, so let me just go back to that for a second. If I can share that with you. Okay. Excuse me, it's not gone back to where it was. Scrolling, excuse me. Okay. So when you've completed your stress container, the most important thing to do is the second part of this, which is looking at what your stress container looks like. So stepping back, looking at the things that are in it. Now they will be different. They will be different for every one of us. What we need to be to look at is that if your stress container is completely overflowing, then that is where you will get vulnerability. Again, it's just that overwhelming feeling. We know what that feels like from a personal point of view. What we do have though is this little tap off to the left. It wasn't one of our finer artwork moments in the office, but it is a tap. Okay, and that tap plays a most important role in thinking about how you can turn that tap on by putting in helpful coping mechanisms that work for you. Now, often when I do this, people go, "Oh, okay, was I supposed to do some of this?" Okay, you cannot carry on piling all of this in. We are not superhuman. We cannot wear underpants outside our trousers. We're not some sort of mythical comic book hero here. We're human beings that have to cope. So we need to have things that help us. So some of the things that people put in their stress containers, so could be yoga, could be going for a walk, could be family games, whatever. Thank you very much. Sorry for leaving. Whatever that feels right for you. Gardening, I have an allotment. I found it's marvelous, and the plants don't talk back. It's just wonderful. You can go out, get fresh air. Really, it's great for me. Do a bit of yoga. I did the couch to 5K in lockdown because I was just turning into whatever you do in lockdown. So it's again, I don't have children. I'm a little bit older. Maybe some of the things that I can do, you probably go, great, well, no way I can do it with 2, 3 children or a life or being a carer. So it's about making sure those things work for you. But you do need to have something to turn that tap on. Some of you maybe have started developing a few things if you had time during lockdown. Is do you realise that actually even having a family meal where we turned all our phones off and we all just had a really a conversation for half an hour and talked about our days and how that worked for us, then actually it's about keeping those good things in that really helped you. So it can look very different. What can happen if we don't put healthy things in is we get unhelpful coping strategies. And that's what we talked on before about where we are then maybe we're having a glass of wine and then it's 2 glasses of wine and it's the thing that becomes wine o'clock or whatever. That's one thing. Not good eating patterns, just completely working and expecting to be superhuman, getting into the habit of just working and having no cut off. But again, going back to the analogy of the oxygen mask, you're not a lot of good to someone if you are you're just absolutely not taking enough oxygen into your lungs. You're not refreshing yourself. So it's not going to help you, it's not going to help your family, and it's certainly not going to help the children that you want to support. So there is an evidence here that having those coping mechanisms can help you. So there is an awful lot of evidence saying that self-care, looking after yourself, can really reduce stress massively. Now, it's not going to reduce all of it, and please don't think I'm saying this lightly, but we do have to have some things that are self-care related. Okay. Hopefully all that's making sense so far. So if you want to pop anything, that would be brilliant. Okay. So stress versus mental health is a key issue. So some people would say they strive on a little bit of pressure, but that's okay. And probably do it. Some of us, it gets us out of bed in the morning. Some of us actually see that as a new opportunity. Some of us see that as, I was getting really bored at home. I'm glad to get back to it, and I know it's different, but we'll get away. We'll get through it, whatever that is. So, but that's still pressure. Where these things converge is, so pressure is often things that you put on yourself. So it's especially that you've internalized and you're going, and it's probably healthy enough to know that you know yourself well enough to be able to navigate that. What we have with stress is that's an external force. So the external force are things that we are often beyond our control. So having that balance is important. But one person's spur to action can be someone else's meltdown. So again, going back to some of the triggers, is if we keep building up the pressure that we're putting on ourselves, then actually, then it gets out of proportion. So again, what's healthy stress? Sometimes we can cope with stress in the short term, but what it can't do is it shouldn't be a long-term strategy to getting through, because you'll be constantly getting through, and it never ends. So again, striking a balance wherever possible and thinking about it in those terms can be helpful. It can help, and I know, teachers' workload is just educating, acknowledging stress and anxiety, raising awareness for all of you. So not being the tall poppy, it's like, okay, should we be asking all of us to do this now? What are we going to do to navigate through it? We can't sustain this, so what's our how can we have a discussion about it? So again, open discussion, resources and help available. We're all of us. I'm an educator, so if somebody said a year from now, could we anticipate this? Could I be anticipating learning several new software programs to deliver training, to rewrite probably 20 years of materials to work online, to market in a completely different way? I would have thought you were completely bonkers. But we're here and we're in get through mode, but we also need to have consolidation mode as well. And keep some things that we protect and some things that we're prepared to be and can be flexible on. But it's not, we can't keep doing it in an unsustainable way. So I talked about being self-aware and also having some self-care. So this is really about having 4 pillars. Now I subscribe to and I put a link in the resource sheet for this, to a podcast, and I've got several books by the guy. Yeah, here it is. There you go. Yeah, Rangan Chatterjee, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. He writes a 4-pillar plan. This is an extract from that, and he was really about balance. So we've talked a lot about that this afternoon, is having equal measures of relaxation in there. So whether it is just having a hot bath, shutting the door, obviously making sure the children are there, they've got cover and that's all sorted, but just having a half an hour with your earbuds in, listening to some music that you like, whatever that is, then it's about your relaxation and you unhooking your brain. Eating well, we all know a Mediterranean diet, and I was watching Jamie last night, eulogizing stuffed bish bosh and all that wonderful stuff, but we do know beige food's not good for us. And lots of pink prosecco might be lovely, but again, it's all in moderation, like anything else. It's a horrible word, but it's the reality. Moving, making sure that we're getting a bit more exercise. There's a lot of initiatives I know around going by bike. I don't know how you quite do that with a big pack of books on your back, but there you go. But moving, getting out the weekend, in the evening while we can, beautiful day today. So but it's about having a little bit of all of those things in, and sleeping. So having a wind down routine, not staying on social media and our Facebook page literally to the moment that we put our phone down by our bed and we're using it as an alarm. So there's some thoughts you maybe shouldn't use your mobile as an alarm, but it might be required, whatever. So again, nothing on there is you'd be surprised about. It's common sense, but what it probably isn't is common practice. So again, for all of us, being aware of how that should feel and look, and putting some balance in our lives. Does that make sense? Comment would be good. Okay, so I'm just coming on the downward slope of the presentation now, a little bit more about conversations and things as well. So what I'd like to do now for a few minutes is to play you, it's a very short 9-minute TED talk. And I thought, as I'm not a teacher, I'd like to have views of a teacher representative talking about mental health. And this is one I found, so we'll play that, and then any of your comments will be very much appreciated. So I'm just going to move that into YouTube, and it'll play direct. You may need to turn your volumes up a little bit to capture this. I've had some people saying it's slightly buffering, but okay.
How do you feel? How do you genuinely, honestly feel? Right? Ask a teacher that question, and the answer could be absolutely terrifying. As human beings, we have become pretty shocking at taking care of ourselves. But as teachers, we have reached a whole other level of neglect. A third of teachers quit the profession within the first 5 years of qualifying. On top of that, 1 in 83 last year were signed off on long-term sick due to pressures of work, stress, anxiety. That's 3,750 human beings. You may know one of them. Friends, colleagues, family. We have reached an epidemic of stress in our schools, and it is a reality that needs facing.
Sorry, you're saying you can't see the video. It won't be a second. Sorry, I'll see if I can get the actual
How do you feel? How do you genuinely, honestly feel?
Can you see it now? Just
right? Ask a teacher that question, and the answer could be absolutely terrifying. As human beings, we have become pretty shocking at taking care of ourselves. But as teachers,
sorry about that.
we have reached a whole other level of neglect. A third of teachers quit the profession within the first 5 years of qualifying. On top of that, 1 in 83 last year were signed off on long-term sick due to pressures of work, stress, anxiety. That's 3,750 human beings. You may know one of them. Friends, colleagues, family. We have reached an epidemic of stress in our schools, and it is a reality that needs facing. But what if we could, as individuals, take little steps to start to place the same emphasis on staff well-being as we do for the mental health of the children that we teach? What would that look like? How would that feel? So everyone has a story of how they've struggled, and I'm no different, and wow, was I struggling. So a couple of years ago, I bumped into my old primary school PE teacher, randomly at a museum with my 2 young girls, and as they toasted some bread, he asked me how I was doing and how being a teacher was. And in that moment, I decided to be completely honest, both with him and with myself. And I told him of how much I was struggling, how life had just become too much, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a teacher anymore. I didn't know if I could be a teacher anymore. And then I listened to him, and I absorbed how difficult he had found the role, not just back when I knew him, all those years ago, but in the years that followed, and actually throughout his whole career. And I wasn't alone. I realized other people felt the same way that I was feeling. Because the reality was that 30 years on from those days with him in PE, I was the broken one. I was the one struggling to simply cope, let alone stand up and teach outstanding lessons every day. And 2 weeks after that seemingly random catch-up with that old school teacher of mine, I was signed off work sick and in danger of becoming one of those 3,750 teachers that stay signed off. And I made a choice. And my choice was to survive. So I have always loved yoga. I loved yoga so much that I signed up for a yoga teacher training course with the best teachers at the most amazing, beautiful, wonderful studio, but I wasn't going to do it. I was going to cancel my place because life had just become too overwhelming. But the universe, which already I know sounds a little bit yoga-like, so I knew I was on the right track, lined things up a little bit for me and made it just a little bit easier for me to say yes. To say yes to that cause and yes to myself. And never have I been more thankful of the timing of this yoga teacher training starting, because it taught me everything I needed to know to start to put my pieces of myself back together. If nothing changes in our schools and emphasis isn't placed on staff well-being, then the extraordinary human beings that teach or have the mind-blowing task of teaching the next generation of extraordinary human beings will lose their sparkle. And their drive, their determination, their passion will go. You are so important. You are so significant. Yes, a change in the way that the education system views staff well-being would be wonderful, life-changing, teacher-saving. But what can we do as individuals to begin to collectively move mountains? It is so simple. Take care of yourself. That's it. If we can commit to taking care of ourselves, if we can start to change our perspective about this thing called work-life balance, support each other along the way, then a change can happen. We have stopped listening to ourselves. We are starting to become disconnected and separated from our lives. How often have you wished your day away, your week, your school term, just to get to the evening, the weekend, the next half term, just to breathe? That right there is how we are becoming disconnected and separated from our lives. But you can change and improve your life. You can increase your happiness levels and your connections with the world around you and those people in it. I know you can, because knowing this to be true is what saved me. Saved me from staying broken, saved me from quitting a job that I actually loved, saved me from separating myself from my own children, my family, my friends. So I said it was simple, but how do we even begin to take care of ourselves? Grab a notebook, start a journal. Tell yourself that you are enough, and do that every single day. Drink enough water, exercise. Practice mindfulness, which is just meditation, which is just sitting still, quietly, for a few minutes. Try yoga. Get curious about your relationship with your phone and social media. Practice random acts of kindness. Ask for support and begin to connect with who you truly are. Why? Why bother? Why bother doing all these things? Because you are exquisite. And there is no one else like you. And if you doubt your significance, if you don't believe that you're important in this grand scheme of things, stop. Stop right there in that moment, in that thought, and remember this. Your light is the most important thing in your life that needs protecting. So guard it, shield it, fuel it, and defend it with your life. Because then you can be the light in someone else's life. Thank you.
I'm just going to post the link to the actual video. So if anybody wants to watch it afterwards, then I'm just going to put it in the chat box, so it's there for everybody. I'm sorry some of you had some issues with that. Occasionally it happens that you just can't see it in my screen. Okay. So, but any comments on what you thought of that would be gratefully received as well. So thank you. Right, I'm just going to move back into my presentation. Okay, we've already mentioned about the resources pack that we're putting together, so that will be sent to you automatically at the end, and I will show you some of the things that are contained in it in a moment. This was something that I found very interesting, which I have included, which is an initiative between Twinkle, which I think are a teachers' resource organisation, and they have joined forces with Mind to put together a resource pack, which is I have it on good authority is excellent. So there's lots and lots of things to support you, your students, each other, some great ideas. There's an active forum, live forum as well. So anything that is helpful. So I've included it in it as well that can share. I did hear a podcast as well on Radio 4 this week, The Secret Lives of Teachers, which I thought was very good. But so I'll not put it on because that's a very personal view, but I haven't put it in the pack. But it is a good one to seek. Okay. So just as we wind down towards the end of the presentation, what I have included in here is areas where you can help those that are suffering. So that could be yourself, your colleague, or a family member. So that we know, like anybody, to help anyone with mental health issues is about listening, understanding experiences, good signposting, to help. So resource packs we're giving you, but also the schools will have your own as well. So some of your unions do, Education Mutual do. So it's really useful. But the most important thing is to be able to direct based on what they're telling you, asking them what would be helpful for them, what would be real. Encourage them to take part in activities that they enjoy. So if they've gone down and a little bit of shutdown, it's trying to coax people, not force people, but coax people maybe to get back. And the last point I've put about medication is there was an awful lot of evidence for those who again, self-diagnosis, but particularly during lockdown, is, well, I've got through this without going for a prescription because it was difficult for them to do. So yeah, I'm fine, I'm coping without it. But again, making sure that they have the right level of support clinically. It's great having some coping strategies, but if medication is required as well, encouraging people to do that is really important. So time to talk. The good old thing is, how are you? Fine. Or we're I don't know, is it a British thing that we all sort of we glaze over it, but actually there's probably so much more going on behind. You know, they're feeling empty, we're feeling insignificant, defeated, misunderstood, all of those things. So how are you? Fine is probably not going to get you where you need to be. So I'm going to take you just through a few examples. You'll have a full copy of all of these as well. So there's something that does require a little bit of practice, and maybe you can think about in scenarios that you want to address, or actually thinking about those things for yourself as well. So preparing conversations, yeah, Remember, every conversation is different. Finding a quiet place. So, I know a couple of teachers have shared that they're thinking as they're leaving the building, heading towards the car park, that they try and start that conversation about, I've noticed that, yourself, is there anything you want to talk about? Conversations are often with, no, I'm fine, get in the car, shut the door, end off. But maybe a couple of days later, that conversation starts up again. So again, it's not always going to be an instantaneous reaction, and that's no reflection on your skills. It can just be about how people are feeling as well. So again, empathetic language, paraphrasing, can I understand what you're saying, in a positive, paraphrasing in a positive way. Avoiding cliches, pull yourself together, we're all in this, it affects all of us, is not helpful language, as we know. And remember your boundaries in the terms of not being getting into diagnostic mode. It's really about helping and listening. Always remembering we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and can be used in that proportion. Gosh, that's an old one, isn't it? Sorry. Okay. So again, I don't have to tell you the merits of open and closed questions, but I've given you some examples here on helpful conversation starters. So, how are you? How do you? So keep drilling a little bit more. Don't see myself. What are you feeling? What can I do to help you? So it's not about you. It's about them. It's also about just asking a little bit more than you would normally. Expect a little bit of shutdown, or the floodgates will open, because they're just actually wanting to talk to someone. And for those of you who've ever been in this position, often when you're articulating things for the first time, it's it's powerful, it's scary, but it's actually often very cathartic as well. So it sounds really useful to do that. Explore and stay calm. So again, it's all about your own body language. Help me understand. Sometimes you are told things, and I found this at the beginning, that are quite shocking because they're beyond the realm of your own experience. So again, just staying calm, listening. Tell me more about that. Okay, and what can I do? How can I help you? What are you comfortable with? So going back to the young man who worked in our office, is finding what people are comfortable with. Again, when I first started getting involved in mental health, I probably wasn't a bit of a zealot as like, oh, yes, I could help you with that. Oh, I know something. Oh, I can direct you to here. Often not helpful. Just, okay, you've told me that. What do you want me to do with that information? Do you want me to do anything with that information? So unless you feel there's an infinite danger or anything, it's about just understanding and navigating that together. Do we want to go, a walk on a Saturday? Is that helpful? Do you want to get online, have a chat, have a Zoom talk when we're away from school or from other family members? What is helpful to them? I wouldn't expect things to happen very quickly, and often that it's very measured. And again, but if people are overwhelmed, first steps can be really important, and then often things can get moving. Listening, no judgment. It's such a brave thing to do, is to speak out and start talking about mental health. And it can be very distressing to listen to it. So again, I hope through just what we've talked about today is having that, empathy, not immediately responding, saying, I know how you feel, sort of thing. Maybe we would have done it before. And I think that is an expression that sometimes you think is helpful, but actually it's probably not helpful, because it can often cause people to shut down a little bit. So explore options, explore resources, but don't thrust it upon them. I say I got a little bit busy with some of the things I was helping people with. Listening and understanding. So full attention in the right places, we've said, gain insight and trust. And it isn't about problem solving. That's not your job. Okay. Look at the situation from their perspective wherever you can. and then help with the appropriate course of action. So in the resource packs we're giving you, it is also, there's lots and lots of different things. So it could be around eating disorders, anxiety, there's Samaritans, lots of different charities, because around mental health there's a myriad of things to understand and to navigate. And actually most of the charities, most of the support is quite specific to an area, maybe an eating disorder, anxiety. But there is also some really good resources, which it's a general questionnaire, it's an NHS, and again the links in there, which actually help the person to understand what they're feeling and where they should be seeking help and prioritising those areas. And it gives them a snapshot and a summary that is objective and not subjective. So that can be quite a helpful thing. Probably worth you all doing that. I've done one, it's my own. It's like a health check. And then they will send you updates and ask you how you're doing based on what you have. So it's a really good resource. Giving support, you're not alone in this is important, and that's not is I know what you feel like. It's not you're not alone. Again, it's not wanting to be part of some sort of club, but equally because it's different for everybody. But saying that you understand and you are overwhelmed at this time and we can help, it can be massively supportive. So I encourage to get other support. So from family members, again, if you're just the first person they've spoken to, but actually don't feel like it's incumbent on them to come back to you. There could be other people that they just want now feel brave that they've articulated it, almost sounded you out. It's again trying to get people who can really help them, who know them, who can direct them. It could be you. It could be actually that could be the helpful solution. That could be what they want. But don't be surprised if it's again putting them back into the support that is, say, their friends and families or colleagues. Knowing there's a sort of caveat here. Knowing other people who've suffered from mental health, I think it has a level of duality about it. Sometimes people are comfortable with that because you're amongst friends and you know what that feels like. But equally, if it's when I suffered a little bit from mental health, I didn't know what I was going to, and the people around me, if I didn't understand it, they didn't understand it. So actually, that wasn't helpful. I needed to try and navigate that myself and understand what that felt like for me, and be able to be a bit more of the help was more targeted, a bit more of a missile than a scattergun. So again, don't be thinking, oh well, we'll push them towards, oh, so and so's feeling like that. Do you want to talk to them? Again, might be helpful, might not be helpful. There's no exact science for this. Okay, so I'm just rounding up now. So exploring prevention. So again, if this happens again, so this is not just to your own situation, but also in your friend or school or colleague, it's asking questions around why is this happening? What can we do about it? So is it their coping strategies? Is it their lifestyle? Is it the way the things around them which they might have no control over? So I think sometimes exploring prevention is quite a deep one, because if it is happening, it's like I don't use this lightly, but the definition of madness is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So if we are doing the same things over and over again in the same way, we're not going to change that situation. So something does have to shift. So, sometimes it takes a bit of soul searching. Sometimes it is a change of role. It might be change of hours. It could be a complete change of career. So I'm advocating that, but so sometimes it can be massive. So like Kelly in the TED talk, she sort of pushed herself out there and thought about something else, but actually came back. But in order to understand how that's going to work sustainably for an individual, that's important. So again, just to summarize all of this, what could you expect in your workplace? So again, for all of us to be part of the solution, making sure that we understand what mental health plan looks like within your school, your organisation, lots of support and awareness. Again, from often that external support can be very useful. Equally, if you have champions, first aid champions or first aiders, then again, it's not hierarchical, it's not about going to your head of department, it's about having to go to someone that is potentially quite neutral but just will listen and is trained to listen and be supportive. So again, that's very useful. Positive environment, lots of signposting, and general measurement. You know, how are we going to, what is the health of our organisation? So yeah, and healthy lifestyle balance. So it's not maybe always going after work. At one school was going off on, I was doing this like last Friday, one school was going off to a socially distant game of rounders in the local park, and they were taking some of their students with them to be the fielders, which I thought was quite interesting. So people are finding different ways. Okay, so finally, just again, organisation. I'm going to flick through the handout that I'm giving you at the moment, just that will go out as part of the pack. There is something that I did want to mention, that you also, through Education Mutual, I'm just going to check my wording here, there is something called a well-being claim. So if you're already subscribed to the service, that is available through the site. So you can go on and you can put in your details, again, totally confidential. So that could be something that you are you can take advantage of. So it is part of your membership as well. So I think it does have to be referred on, but it gives you a feeling personally, or you know someone, encourage them to go onto the site and complete the well-being claim. So that's just something that is there. So again, I touched on a number of things there. So okay, so let me just flick for a moment to close that for a second. Right, I want to close up, but lost my mouse. Okay, so this is will be sent out after the presentation. So there's a list there, lots and lots of different support mechanisms as well. If there's anything you want to particularly ask me, then please stay on the line, or I'll answer any individual questions I can. Bearing in mind I'm not a clinician, but I do have oodles of different things that I can take on board. Okay, so really all this left me to say thank you so much for your time today. It's been really lovely working with you, and hope it has built your general awareness for yourself, for your family, and just get your antennae up a little bit more. These are challenging times, so if it helps you navigate those, then I'm delighted. So any comments would be very useful. Again, so thank you. I'm just going to turn off your